Okay, so I'm recording. This is Judy Jetson welcoming you to the Weave a Real Peace panel presentation on Asia. It's morning for some of us, it's middle of the night for others of us, because this is a truly international group located all around the world. Weave a Real Peace is a nonprofit organization that's welcomes members who are textile enthusiasts, as well as people that are textile makers and sellers. And today, I think you're going to be delighted by the variety of work that our panelists are doing all around the world. We have three wonderful panelists for you today. We have Maren Beck, whose company is Above the Fray, and she works primarily in Laos. That's what she's going to talk about today, although she also does work in Vietnam, I think you said, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, then we have for you Gunjan Jain, and she is located in Delhi, is that right? I know you said you're originally from Delhi, okay, India. And she's going to talk about the work that she's been doing over the last, since 2007, according to my notes. And our third panelist is probably newest to this wonderful challenge and opportunity that international textile work brings us, and that is Udipana. And she's from the northeast portion of India, which is really close to Southeast Asia and East Asia. And she's just been evolving an organization called Lahe Lahe, and she'll tell us about that. I did want to mention to you, if you are not a WARP member, but you're interested, we would be happy to have you. You can sign up on our website. And our website also has a wonderful resource called the Artisan Resource Guide. And if you're a member, you can have a listing there for free. And it's a great place to go if you're interested in purchasing textiles from around the world. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Maren Beck, who will take it from here. Maren, you're up.
Oh, hello. I'm going to start my presentation here with a map of the, oops, I clicked on, see, wouldn't you know I do that? Clicked on the wrong thing. Let me try it again here. Oh dear, it was just up and I don't know what happened. Give me half a second here, apologies. Here we go. There we go. Can you see, everybody see that okay?
No. No, it's not up, Maren.
Okay, give me just a second. You know, I had this down and now I am, here we go. Let's try this. Here we go. There, now can you see it all right?
Yes, that's great.
Perfect, thank you. And I will get it on the right view and off we go. So starting with a map showing the various places we're discussing today, I'm going to be presenting on part of Laos, that's the orange section here, and Houaphanh province is the section on the far right here. And Gunjan is going to be presenting on Odisha over here in India, and Udipana is going to be presenting on Assam. So that gives you a perspective of where the various parts are in the world that we're going to be discussing. So I am Maren Beck at Above the Fray. For 15 years, my husband and I have owned Above the Fray, traditional hill tribe art. It's a for-profit business, but we have a nonprofit ethic of purchasing directly from the artists at a fair price and educating the end customer about the culture and people behind the art. So that is who we are at this point. Here is Laos. You can see it in orange in relation to Myanmar, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand. Here is all of Laos, again, Houaphanh province. Here's Houaphanh province blown up, and down here in this little corner is the district of Samta. And that is the birthplace of the textiles I'm going to be sharing with you today. Here's the Valley of Santa. It's an absolutely glorious place, absolutely beautiful. 80% of the rural Lao people are subsistence farmers. And if a family can afford to free a woman up from making food so that she can weave, her weaving brings cash into the family, and this cash can pay for schooling, medical care, a tractor or motorcycle to take the product to market. And as such, a weaver is very highly valued in Laos. Come on now, why isn't it going? There we go. We represent individual artisans, and because there are not cooperatives here, they have created their own sort of internal cooperative in terms of how they work with each other, whether somebody is a weaver, dyer, spinner, silk reeler, or dye collector. And we pay people what they ask for their products, because they have a very large percentage of the market in Laos itself and know exactly what their products are worth. Here is my chom. She is a young woman who is an excellent weaver at this point in time. You can see she is wearing her school uniform. She has taken a lunch break from school and has come home to weave for a little bit, and then she's heading back to school again. One of our dear friends is Suksakon. Here she is wearing a skirt that she dyed, designed, and wove. And she is she went to school through 6th grade, because that's what a lot of folks did back in her generation. And then she learned all the dyes her mother knew by the time she was 12 years old, and by age 13 was inventing all of her own dyes. She won 1st and 2nd prize for the first national weaving competition in '94, and now has over 200 weavers who weave her designs and her dyes. And so again, they don't work for her, they work with her, they work together. And a good friend, Put, also has about 50 weavers who weave her patterns and dyes. Many other women are working on developing their skills so that they also can take on some of the designing and dyeing roles. The girls start to weave when they can reach the treadles, generally about age 7 or 8. And the women are so proud of those who want to weave. The girls are not forced to weave if they don't want to. No one wants to waste the silk or waste the time if the girls don't want to do it. But if they do want to weave, they're highly encouraged. The boys of that age all work in the fields with the other male relatives, and the girls who don't like to weave can join them and as part of contributing to the family. And here are just a few pictures of some of the beautiful textiles from that region. Now, the whole process starts with the planting of the mulberry trees, and the mulberry leaves are used to feed the silkworms. And when the silkworms get big enough, they spin their cocoons. And when they have spun their cocoons and the silk is ready to go, then the silk is reeled by being put into hot water. And so instead of being spun where the silk is cut as the worm comes out, in this case, or where the moth comes out, in this case, the silk is one long contiguous fiber, about 1/4 to 1/2 mile long on each cocoon. And those are joined with multiple other fibers from the cocoons to make the beautiful silk that is being used here. The next step in the process is dyeing. First, the silk is washed in the water that is run through the ashes of the rice from the fireplace, and that makes lye to knock off the saracen, and then the dyeing process starts. Here's Sook doing some lac dyeing, making the beautiful red. All of these are natural dyes again. This is called corben. It's a giant jungle tree that makes the beautiful gold dye that's over here on the left pot. On the right pot is ham. It is from a jungle vine. This is ham, that bright yellow with red dyed in lac, and it makes an absolutely neon orange. I'm helping grind up the fresh indigo to make a beautiful green. And that's on the right-hand side is the green dye from the fresh, and on the left is blue from the fermented indigo. Again, more dye stuff. This is from a jungle vine. It also makes a deep brown, and the purple indeed in this picture is natural. It comes from the baby leaves of the mango tree, plus the water that black sticky rice has soaked in overnight. Amazingly how inventive some of these dyes can be. And then there's a weaving template. This is one of the specific things about this region in Laos. They have a template that essentially is an original of the jacquard loom. And each one of the horizontal threads picks out one row of patterns. So each thread is essentially one pattern heddle, and you can have up to 1,000 pattern heddles per textile. They get incredibly complex. Come on, go forward again. There we go. Here is 84-year-old Mai weaving a skirt border on her loom under her house. And when the designers are creating pattern templates, they incorporate the motifs that have been used in the culture for millennia. They've been 1,000 years in this region, 4,000 years back going into China. So this has been in a long evolving process. This is a Naga mythological river serpent. They get terribly complex with just Naga alone in the pattern. Mythological elephant lions, mythological birds, ancestor spirits, and this big white fellow in the middle here is a mythological giant spirit, essentially the boogeyman to keep children from going into the forest by themselves. And then there are lots of natural creatures also that are in there. These textiles are worn not only by the shaman in shaman ceremonies, but also in the Basi ceremony, which you're seeing here, where people's spirits are called into the room and then ritually tied onto their wrists with string to make sure that when you're traveling or going places, your spirit doesn't get left behind. Additionally, at weddings or other ceremonies, women are decked head to toe in these fabulous textiles and skirts as well as the shawls. So what I wanted to show you is how the pattern template looks a little bit up close. And again, you can start to see in the pattern template some of the design that's going to be coming into the textile. And when it's used, first of all, you have to start by warping the loom or by creating a warp and then warping a loom, which is often done in a shared group. And then here's my chom again, showing how the pattern threads that create each heddle essentially are separated in order to be able to create the pattern shed to pick in the pattern. So here's a woman picking in the pattern on a particular textile. You can see how many colors she's picking in across each individual row. And now I'm hoping the video works. Oh, see, it only works half the time. I'm going to skip this now, apologies, but I was going to show you, you can see where the vertical heddles are separated, and what she does is pull forward the pattern heddles that are in front of the string, puts the sword in to hold up that pattern, and then hand picks each color that goes through to create the pattern for that one row. I wish I could show you this, but sometimes this freezes. And so each row is one thread. It's quite complex and quite time consuming. Now, the other types of weaving that take place in this area are used for everyday clothes, just very simple stuff, relatively speaking. So ikat this is a standard daily wear skirt. And you see this woman wearing one of them. This has ikat with supplemental warp pattern. Here's some supplemental warp pattern and discontinuous supplemental weft. This is warp ikat with supplemental weft. And this is weft ikat in a natural dyes. And then it goes on in terms of all these stunning outfits that are being worn. Now, these textiles are worn all over Laos, as I said, and even to the point that women have costumes that are traditional that include the skirts as part of their uniform for being teachers or being bankers or whatever it might be. So I'm just going to flip through a couple of quick pictures here. You can see some of the stunning, stunning art these women weave. I also wanted to let you know that we have, my husband and I have written a book called Silk Weavers of Hill Tribe Lao. It was published by Thrums Publishing, and Joe Coco was the photographer. If you are interested in reading more about the people, the customs, the culture, and how people live there, as well as more of the dyeing and weaving technical information, that's available here. And if you want to go on a tour and actually do hands-on workshops with the folks here, you can join me on tours. All of this information is available on our website. Here's indigo dyeing with Hmong, embroidery with Hmong and Zhao people, some of the dyes we made with the folks we were just showing you, using the local tools, creating ikat, actually weaving on the looms with a pattern template, and then ending up in a beautiful location at the end. So that's it today. Again, if you are interested in knowing more about some of these textiles or want to ask me any questions about something you might own that you would like to know more about, please let me know. We also have personal Zoom shopping available. And as Judy said at the beginning, we work not only in Laos, but also in Vietnam with textiles, baskets, tools, and ceremonial items. So if anybody has any questions, please let me know.
That's terrific, Maren. Let's see if I can turn myself back on.
And did I make it in time?
Yes, you did. You did a good job. Let me ask a quick question.
Sure.
One of our participants wants to know what mordants that they use with their natural dye.
The primary mordant that it used there is alum. And it used to be that they would use sour leaves, but since alum has become available in the market, that's what they use instead. And everything is pre-mordant with alum other than the fresh indigo, which does not require a mordant.
Very good. Okay. Well, then we're going to go on to hear from Gunjan. And I want to encourage any of you that have questions, you can write them in the Q&A or the chat, either one. So we've got Gunjan on, and we'll turn Maren off. And please introduce yourself and tell us your story.
Okay, thank you, Judy and Bob, for having me here. I'd also like to thank Susan Deltman for introducing me to this wonderful WARP community. I'm very excited to share my textile journey with all of you. Let me share the presentation. Can you see the presentation?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
There we go.
Okay, great. So, all right. So I'm going to talk about my initiative, Rich. Rich literally means a tree in Hindi and Sanskrit languages. It's a social enterprise and design studio that we had set up in 2008. So it's been, 13 happy years. We collaborate with handloom weavers and artisans in different clusters of rural India. And our main region of focus is the state of Odisha. Odisha, as you can see in the map, is located in the eastern part of India, and it has a beautiful 450 kilometers coastline along the Bay of Bengal. In Odisha, one can find ancient riverine rainforests where indigenous civilization still thrives in its rich culture and biodiversity. To tell you a bit about myself, I am trained as a fashion designer and started my career designing for large-scale brands in the apparel export industry. But very soon I was disillusioned with the industrial process of making clothes, and so decided to move to Odisha, where I set up the studio. So yes, it was a conscious switch from designing for large-scale apparel brands, which promote fast fashion, to working with craftspeople, where I got a chance to explore the idea of slow, sustainable fashion that luckily Odisha as well as India as a country still offers. And when I entered this region, it was, I realized it's a gold mine of textiles, and weavers take pride in wearing their own weaves even today. But having said that, ironically, many weavers were not getting fair wages for their work. Migration was a constant issue where many weavers were migrating to other cities and states for compromised labor work like operating on mechanized power looms or getting jobs for breaking stones in quarries or even becoming street hawkers selling vegetables. The other looming issue I noticed was of mechanization of these weaves, where power looms are rapidly replacing the hand looms. And these power loom machines are also replicating the hand-woven designs, and these copies are sold in the same local markets as hand-woven textiles, which is resulting in appropriation of the original design, as well as posing stiff competition for the genuine hand-woven textiles. And to address these two issues of reverse migration and mechanization, and to test whether it is economically viable for weavers to return to their looms in today's technologically driven day and age, was what motivated me to start this modest initiative. In which we collaborate with weavers on design development, where we focus on bringing back to life languishing and rare weaves of Odisha and contemporize the traditional handlooms for urban markets. But we make sure the cultural significance is not lost in the process, mostly because we strongly believe these textiles are actually cultural indicators and documentation of their society where they are produced. We work with several different techniques and communities. Odisha is famous for its fine curvilinear ikat textiles, which also is one of our major areas of intervention. And the beauty is that each ikat textile, has a tale to tell and displays the local flavors of the region where they are produced. Our latest collection is based on a festival called Bali Jatra, celebrated every year in many parts of Odisha to commemorate the ancient maritime trade links between Odisha, which was earlier known as Kalinga, and Southeast Asia. And ikat, along with other textiles like batik and block prints, formed an important part of the trade culture. And you find this history illustrated even today by ikat weavers in Odisha in their local saris and textiles. So our recent collection in Rich is also based on Bali Jatra, where we extensively researched on this beautiful cultural exchange reflecting distinct characteristics from every region. For example, the sarong sari here is inspired by the classic temple border, which is also a reference to the Mount Meru or the Sumeran Mountain, which is known as the sacred five-peaked mountain of Hindu, Jain, and Buddhist cosmology. We also work with a community of highly skilled tussar silk weavers. Now, tussar silk is indigenous to India. It has a beautiful natural golden beige color of its own, and that's why it's also known as the golden wild silk. It has a rich, lustrous texture, which is very different from other silks. And it's produced by the larva of the insect Antheria mylitta. The coastal belt has a flourishing decentralized system of tussar weaving, where from local collection of tussar cocoons to thigh reeling into yarns by women spinners, and then finally hand weaving into tussar silk saris and yardages. I mean, the entire process is hand done without any electric machines even today. Our latest collection in Rich is where we experimented with ikat on tussar silk, which was quite a challenge in design, mostly because tussar silk is a very notorious yarn. Since it shrinks and expands with moisture, has an uneven texture, which also contributes to its unique elegance, but makes ikat a difficult technique to achieve on it. The other major technique that we work with is extra vest, locally known as Jada weave, which is woven on a jaw loom. Shibori on loom is one of my favorite experiments, which was inspired by the works of an American textile artist, Catherine Ellis, who introduced this amazing new way of adapting the popular Japanese tie-dye technique of shibori as a weave on the loom. And of course, we juxtaposed it with a fish motif to offer the local cultural flavor to the textile. This is a collection where we have tried to revive back the tapestry weaving technique in Odisha. Very few weavers are left practicing the rare art form of weaving calligraphic ikat, which we have been trying to revive back in new styles. Even the practice of natural dyeing itself is very, very rare in Odisha today. And we have been experimenting with local ingredients like lark, onion skin, jackfruit tree bark. You get a beautiful yellow plummet, Indian madder, marigold, catechu. We've designed costumes for several classic dance troupes. In 2018, we completed 10 years, and to celebrate, we decided to walk the ramp together with our weavers in our fashion shows from there on. Last year, around March, when there was a nationwide lockdown due to the pandemic, our business was affected adversely, where exhibitions were cancelled, which were our main source of marketing. So we quickly worked on launching a new e-commerce website to keep us afloat. During the lockdown, we also rolled out a social media campaign titled Weaving Our Way Forward. It was meant for an urban audience on social media, where we tried to create a communication link between our weavers and consumers. This campaign has helped build solidarity across states within the craft people and the craft community at large. There was another experiment we did, a poster campaign during just after the lockdown in India in April last year, where some of us craft designers and organizations came together to launch hashtag Handmade in India. It was a first-time experiment to kickstart a social movement to generate awareness on how essential is handmade in our lives and why we urgently need to support the craft community for a green future. And this was mostly during the debate when, you know, what is essential and what is not so essential for our lives was, you know, the key, debate going around everywhere. And the response was overwhelming. So far, hashtag Handmade in India poster has been translated in 22 regional languages by volunteers. This poster was shared not only in Indian villages and cities, but across the globe through WhatsApp, email, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Do check out our website, and if you like, you could follow us on Insta and FB too, and I would love to take questions from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gunjan. We have a question for you. And I'm going to read it. Where are these fabulously skilled weavers in the caste system of India? How much can a weaver expect to make in a year? And how is that relative to other wages in India?
Okay. So where is the first question? Where are these weavers located? Did I hear
in
right?
the caste system. They're interested in the caste system in India.
System, right. Okay, that's a very interesting question. So, you know, there is a huge caste divide even amongst the weaver community, but a lot, I'd say the majority comes from the scheduled tribe and scheduled caste, which is relatively the lower caste in India. How much are they able to earn? Well, again, that's very, very relative to the kind of market access they have, as well as the kind of skill that they practice. Because India is so diverse in its weaving. I think, forget about every state, I'd say every district offers such unique skills and textiles. It entirely depends on the skill of the weaver and the market access he or she has got.
Thank you. Okay, and there are a few other questions about travel and that sort of thing, but we'll save those for everybody after Udipana gives her presentation. So thank you. All right. Let's turn now to our newest member of the panel, Udipana. Please give us your presentation.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you, WAP, for giving me this platform. And Lahe Lahe is really the baby of the group, it looks like, because I've just gotten started with it. And yeah, a long way to go. So if you can just give me a minute there. Yeah. So this is our logo. So Lahe Lahe really means slowly in my language, which is Assamese, Ahomia. You've seen the map. I'm sorry, I have a very bad throat today. You'll have to excuse me. So Lahe Lahe indicates a peaceful attitude to life that I really missed in all my years away from Assam. And it stands for a sustainable and self-sufficient way of life that is at risk from different forces: globalization, commercialization, industrialization, and specifically in the case of Assam in Northeast India, it is at risk from violent, enduring conflicts and militarization. And this has been going on for over 5 decades now. So Lahe Lahe is what I call a peace business. Conflicts endure because they are lucrative for everybody, but for the powerful and the marginalized, we all know that. And peace, however, is helpful for everybody, again, planet and the people. I am not an entrepreneur, and Lahe Lahe is more like an exploration of a peace building mechanism than anything else. So unlike my fellow panelists, my relationship with textiles is not entirely for textile's sake. I'm really a feminist peace researcher, and that is how I have approached Lahe Lahe as well. I studied the women from the conflict zone in Assam, where I currently am and where my scholarship is also located. And women in this part of India anyway had a tradition of being economically independent, socially vocal. And in the current post-insurgency period that Assam is going through, they are also making peace and crafting social and ethnic reconciliation. And one way that they're doing this is by weaving collectively in cooperatives, and these cooperatives cut across ethnic divides. And they're also doing it at an individual level by adopting eco-friendly practices. And many of these practices are part of their indigenous cultures, but they are also adopting new methods and new eco-friendly practices. So these women are weaving peace for the people of the conflict zone, as well as for the planet. However, it is not sustainable for them because they earn too little from their weaves and crafts. I've read many many reports of governmental and non-governmental interventions where they claim that they are empowering the weavers and enabling them to become economically independent. But in most of these reports, the monthly income generated by these weavers is said to be between $40 to $80 per month. Their crafts are worth much more, and they need much more to survive, really. So I started Lahe Lahe with the intention of connecting these weavers and artisans to global planet-friendly people who would appreciate their eco-conscious crafts, and they would wear their weaves and use their crafts to furnish their homes, and in the process create a sustainable market for them. That way the buyers become peace advocates. So together, the peace weavers and peace advocates work toward peace in the planet and among the people. That was the idea behind Lahe Lahe. So what I do is I travel all over Assam. I visit the artisans in their homes or their cooperatives, and I collect products from them. I do this at a markup if required. And these curated products and their special significance is what you can view through my website, lahelahecrafts.com. And I can share the link to the chat here. I shall do that in a minute. And so most significantly, the products that I curate are what I look at is traditions and how they are keeping traditions and indigenous knowledge alive. So very soon I will be adding baby wraps to my list of products available for purchase through my website. I've seen that new age mamas everywhere are realizing the significance of baby wearing and the benefits of that. But our indigenous tribes have always used baby wraps. When my son was an infant, his nanny used to tie him to her back and go about her daily chores. So it's been a part of our daily lives in that sense. Sometimes the traditional usage may not always be suitable for modern living. So I reimagine that product and then I present it to you, like a traditional scarf being used as a table runner, for instance. I also emphasize products that use traditional knowledge to produce modern necessities. So you'll find a lot of products on my website that use traditional vegetal dyes. My fellow panelists have already spoken about the different kinds of dyes, and they sounded so familiar to me because those are also the dyes that people in Northeast India use for their weaving. And what I most prioritize is enabling the marginalized and conflict-affected indigenous people, especially the women, so that they can reclaim their economic power, which was devastated by decades of living in a conflict economy. You will see two kinds of products on my website, on-the-shelf products that are ready to ship, and worth the wait products that are still in the works, but which I've come to know about from, say, one of my artisans. The ready-to-ship products are all natural and non-violent. They are plant-based. And if you've heard of Eri silk, which is indigenous to Assam, you'll know that it's the only silk that's produced without killing or harming the silkworm. So that's one of the fibers that I work with. Currently, I also have water hyacinth and banana fiber products, cotton curtains, throw pillow shams, and all of those are hand woven, and many of them are dyed with Assam indigo, onion peels, and manjishta, which Gunjan was also talking about a little while ago. My website really is a work in progress, so you will not find any worth the wait products listed there yet. Just the picture of an onion dyed banana fiber table mat set being woven for somebody else, not for Lahe Lahe. But that's the kind of thing I mean. If I see buyers who are interested in products like that, I can ask the weavers to make them an order. You'd have to wait for them, of course, to do their slow magic, but you'll have a product that's really worth waiting for. And here is how you can get in touch with me. For more information on all the curated products, you can visit my website, lahelahecrafts.com. If you are a woman or a gender variant person, I also invite you to join my Facebook group, Peace Weaves, where we discuss our individual relationships to peace, the people and the planet. And my Facebook page, which is open to everyone of all genders, is it's called Lahe Lahe 2. I just set it up today, actually. So it'll be an alternative to the website for receiving updates about my products if you prefer shopping on social media. And I think that's what everybody seems to be doing these days. So that's another alternative. And I am not much of a social media person, but I am learning, and I'm working on creating an Instagram page. So stay in touch and I'll keep you posted. And that's it from me, Judy.
Okay. I have a question for you. Missy wants to know, does conflict environment mean war zone?
Yes. So there are a lot of civil wars going on in the Northeast region as a whole. In fact, they've been going on since before the Northeast became a part of India. And in Assam, it started around the late 70s, early 80s. And there's been, like I said, civil wars, insurgency movements, separatist movements, independentist movements, civil disobedience movements, you name it. It's been, and it's one of the most, one of the lesser known, I should say, conflict zones around the world. And when I'm teaching my students now about it, it's, they have never heard about it. So, but it's there, and it's still one of the pictures that I showed in my presentation. That was from 2020, and it's still happening there. People are still having to protest. They're still having to die. A 16-year-old boy was shot dead in 2020. So yeah, that's how it is.
Oh boy. Well, thank you for your good work. I'm going to invite the other panelists to join us again. And let's see if we can do a little more questions. Let's see if I can get myself back on here. There we go. All right, so all the panelists are back and the moderator, and I've got a couple of questions. I want to start with one from Susan Davis, which I think is a very intriguing question. She wants to know, how do weavers and consumers interact in the community where you're working? And I think that would be a good question for each of you to answer, if you would. Udipana, do you want to go first?
Sure. So, like I was saying, there's a lot of governmental and non-governmental intervention in the weaving sector, especially because it's traditional. Like in Laos and Vietnam, it's every girl, the moment she is old enough, she starts weaving. Even the men do it at times. But the problem here is that the approach to promoting these crafts is through the lens of conflict management. So it's not viable for the weavers who do produce these things. They are given these skills, they do produce them, but they do not have enough buyers. As a result, I've seen, women giving up, and this is something that Gunjan has also talked about. There's a lot of migration to urban areas. The skilled weavers have given up weaving, and even if they do sell, it's below their, below what they are worth. So that was what really pushed me to look at this as an alternative. And like I said, I even buy some of this stuff from them at a markup, because I mean, they would sell it to you at cost price, but they do not count their own labor. And I've seen so many people just buying from them and taking them elsewhere and selling them off at exorbitant rates, and they do not get what they really deserve. So there is no proper channel between the weaver and the consumer as such, and the weaver is always at a loss. I don't know if that answers your question, Susan.
Well, she'll tell us in a minute, but let's have some others join in. What do you find, Marin? How do weavers and consumers interact?
Well, within Laos, the Weavers and Consumers Act either on a direct basis or more commonly through local or regional markets. So some of the weavers we work with sell directly from their homes if people come to them, which doesn't happen a whole lot in Samta because it's such a remote area that not many people are coming. They're starting to have a few tourists, but for the first 15 years we worked there, we didn't see a single other Western tourist at all. I've now seen one. And so locally, since COVID, they're selling through Facebook. Quite savvy folk in Laos, despite being one of the poorest nations in the world. But when it comes to sharing internationally, there are only a few individuals who interact particularly with Samta. So we're one of the peoples who do that, and they have a couple other customers around the world also who come directly to them.
Very good, interesting. How about you, Gunjan?
Yes, I second with Marin. It's quite similar that even our weavers do also parallelly sell directly to consumers in their local markets. A few of them have also started traveling, beyond their own areas and states to other states to participate in exhibitions. And yes, there are sometimes consumers, they like to travel all the way to local places to see the process. I mean, that's the way I met Susan Weltman a few years back when she traveled all the way to Odisha to meet the weavers. So yeah, those are pretty much the ways of meeting the weavers as of now in my area.
All right, very good. Let me throw the next couple of questions to Marin to start with, and then the other speakers can kind of join in. Someone wants to know, Marin, how you and your husband got to Laos, and how you got there in the first place. And then they are also interested in the workshops that you mentioned, and wonder if a beginning weaver could take it, or if it's more for someone with intermediate or advanced skills.
Okay. Let me start with a workshop concept. Those workshops happen through the tours, and anybody can participate, whether they've ever woven before or not. And it's just requires you have a curiosity about the people, the culture, and how their arts tie in with their culture. In terms of how we got started with this, it goes way back, and I'll make this as short as possible. My husband taught English in Kathmandu in the mid-'80s. We traveled around a bit in Southeast Asia, got bit by the Asia bug, as people say, and it bit us pretty hard. And so we have spent all of our time traveling there. I also grew up in a household where my mom was a weaver, spinner, dyer. I made all of my clothes, tailored my business suits, made quilts. So fiber and color have always been part of my life. So whenever we traveled, we would look for people who made things for themselves with their hands, because that's what connected us to the people and taught us more about who they were and their culture and what was important to them. And it was something that we could relate to. And so we fell in love with the region, particularly in Laos, with Samta and Laos, and wanted to keep going back, and thought maybe we could sell a textile or two and be able to pay for plane tickets. But what really happened is we became completely caught up in the entire culture and the people, and we now have more friends in Samta than we have anywhere else. So it has now taken over our lives, and that's our story.
Oh, very nice. Here's another question that maybe Gunjan and Udipana would like to answer. Kathy Stevulak says, beautiful presentations and work. How can we build the value of the handloom and other handmade textiles with young people as both potential makers and customers? How do we make it more attractive for, I'm sure finances is part of it, but young people are often motivated by things other than money as they get started in the world of work.
Okay, if I can take the question first. So we get this quite often, both ways. So it's quite interesting. Do young weavers want to continue weaving or even go back to their looms, or is it finishing after their fathers or mothers have generations? And on the other side of the whole spectrum, are the young consumers attracted to buying and using handmade products? I think, of course, when we talk about from the part of production. Definitely, fair remuneration, wages are one of the key factors that keep the young generation from continuing on the loom. We witnessed examples where the Tussar weaving belt where I work, about 250 to 300 weavers migrated in a span of 3 to 4 years back to their village from powerloom industries to joining their handlooms, mostly for remuneration, which was a myth that cities offer more remuneration. B, which was the key point which I couldn't ever imagine would be an issue, really was health. So a lot of weavers complained of poor health conditions working for organized, huge mills and power looms because they were running as pet shops in the city. And they realized that it's a healthier environment to be in their village and weave on their loom. From the side of the consumers, to attract young consumers, we need them. We are desperate for them. And I think information is the key point here, where the idea of, when the idea of a product should not be limited to its aesthetics, but if we can make efforts to actually empower the consumer behind the product, that's the people and the process and the culture. So I think information plays a very key role to communicating what that product is all about beyond its aesthetic.
That's a very interesting answer. That's it's something that we can do something about, which I love. Panels like this can help. Udipana, do you want to jump on this one at all? I know that economics is part of what you're concerned about.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of ethnic resurgence in the conflict zone because of the conflicts. So I can only speak about my part of India, and maybe Gunjan can talk about the reasons why younger people seem to be more attracted to traditional wear and traditional crafts. But from my perspective, where I am, I see it as a direct result of the conflicts because, they, like I said, there's ethnic resurgence and they want to wear their identities. And so I see a lot of interest among the younger generation, both to produce, to consume, and also to spread the different crafts of the region. But that is where the problem comes in, because that all of that is not lahe lahe. That is not slow crafts. These are all fast. Everything has to be fast. Everything has to be cost effective, cheap. Cheap is the word, and everything has to be. It's moving away from the traditions in certain ways, although it's like tied to the traditions in so many other ways. So that is where I felt that an intervention was needed, that we need to keep that tradition alive and to continue that tradition of eco-friendly cultures and looking at the natural ways of doing things instead of going for synthetic fibers, synthetic dyes, everything that is quick and everything that is disposable. So that is what I feel.
Very good. Marin, do you have anything to add on this topic?
Oh gosh, I just, all I can think of is if we all work hard at educating and bringing in the stories and the humanity of the people who are making the textiles, I think that is something that is of value to people of all ages. And I'm hoping that the younger people are also resonating to it. I hear from my kids who are in their 20s that some of their friends are much more interested in knowing about the ethical sourcing of materials and that people are healthy in the work that they do. And so I am hoping that that then translates into purchasing of those materials also. But I don't have an easy answer. I wish I did, because I would be able to put a lot more money back into something if we could.
Oh, very good. We just got a question that I think some of the rest of you had. Will this session be available to watch later? And the answer is yes. It'll be posted on our YouTube channel. And you can get there by following the links on the weavearealpeace.org website. Also, I believe Kelsey, our administrator, will be sending out a follow-up email to everyone that should give you those links as well. So yes, you'll be able to watch it. I know one person mentioned that the screen was black for one of the presentations, and hopefully that problem will be resolved in the recording, and you can watch that full presentation with all the great images on the recording. I think I want to take one more question, and it's interesting to me how many of the questions today have to do with making a living and selling product. It's no one has really asked about how things changed for you during the pandemic. So I would like to ask each of you to tell us a little bit about how your world and your work has been different now. Udipana, I know that you started practically in the pandemic, so that may be where your story begins. But if the others would like to make a few comments about that, we'd be interested to know how you fared this past year and what you see changing in the way you do business in 2021. Maren, do you want to start?
I'd be happy to start. All of our sales were canceled last year. So we had absolutely no venue outside of websites, web sales, which were a little slow because I think the entire world was a bit in shock and not knowing quite what was going to happen with COVID. We have the exciting thing that we're doing that I'm really enjoying is that we are doing personal Zoom shopping. And so people can call and walk through our gallery by Zoom and see the items and order the items that way instead of looking at a website. So you get real live interaction, and that's interesting.
Very good.
So that's been fun. We did do some social distancing, personal shopping right before the holidays, but our focus is going to be more on the web, and we are actually changing. We're right now in the middle of changing our website into more of a user-friendly shopping venue where we have more of our items loaded. It used to be just like 1% was loaded because everything is one of a kind. So we can't put up one piece and have 20 of them. They're all separate. So that's that part. And in terms of how Lao is interacting, they are selling, as I think I mentioned, on Facebook, and they are selling within Lao. The difficulty for the Lao people is the vast majority of the artists do not speak any language other than Lao. And most of them have not traveled outside of the country itself. And so they are able to sell internally, but rely on folks like my husband and myself to be able to give them an international market.
Very good. Gunjan?
I don't think so. I've ever been as busy as I was last year. I mean, it was a packed schedule, of course, mostly firefighting because, yes, the orders were cancelled. All my exhibitions were cancelled, which we superbly depend upon for our setting. All our peak season, especially the entire winter season, did not take off. But what came out of it was that we had to put our thinking caps and get online. So yes, we worked day and night during our lockdown period in March to launch the e-commerce website. So we shifted completely our marketing online from April onward. Because we were also stuck with a lot of inventory, and not just us, but a lot of weavers, as Marvin said, I mean, there were, I know of some of the new social enterprise who had also just launched a year or 2 years back, had to shut shop because, they didn't have any working capital. The inventory was blocked. So, and for us, what was challenging was that how we can't afford to stop the loom, because the loom, when it's running, it's a hand to mouth game for the weavers. We stop the loom, the production stops, they don't get their daily wages. So we had to keep the looms going, which was a huge challenge where already we had so much inventory. So what we did do was strategically, we started working on more bespoke design ideas with the weavers, which would actually help us to slow down our production. So instead of producing lot more, we started working on new design ideas, which would take slightly longer to produce each piece. And that's how we could, slow down our production with our weavers. And yes, I think social media, Insta, FB, they're my new best friends for my work. And yes, I think digital future, which in a funny way is also contradicting the whole nature of handmade, seems to be really the way forward if we actually get, a sure idea of yes, this pandemic going away. Another point, if I can make a quick share a quick observation, was when we were constantly chatting and being in touch with our weavers during the pandemic and lockdown, and there were many interesting conversations that came out. And I remember one of the weavers sharing that he continues to weave because he believes that art helps him to curb his anxiety and address that issue. So that's something I felt and I learned during the pandemic from my weavers, is that how, the practice of weaving is not just a skill for, livelihood. It's much beyond it. They're artists where it's their art that actually has kept them going. It may sound very poetic, but it's true. And that's what a lot of weavers, because there were times when I would be like, oh, come on, you may want to slow down. It's okay, take a break. Maybe we want to just think and ideate about how to go forward. And they said, when we sit on the loom, that's when we can really meditate and, ideate and address our anxieties. So yeah, let the loom go on.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that a lot of weavers that I know, and spinners too, would agree with, that it's just an end in of itself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Udipana, do you want to have the last word on this?
Yeah, you already mentioned how I started during the pandemic. And I think in so many ways, the pandemic made us more human and more connected because we were isolated and we wanted to be connected. So I connected with people that I met maybe 10 years ago. So I was in the US and I called up a friend who was here and she put me in touch with, she's the principal of a school, right? And she put me in touch with some of the teachers in her school who suddenly had more time, so they were weaving again. So everybody is a weaver, but they do not get the time to weave. They don't have the leisure to weave. Now they had the leisure and they were doing it. So the reason that Lahe Lahe evolved as such an intimate and personal enterprise is because I was in touch with such people who were doing it at such an individual level. And, it just made sense for me to connect with them, to use their craft to help them get it across to a wider audience. And yeah, I think that's what the pandemic did for Lahe Lahe and for me.
Very nice. Well, before we sign off, I do want to bring Susan Weltman into the picture because she sent a message earlier. Susan is our president at Weave a Real Peace, and she sent a message earlier. Turn on your camera, Susan. She said she was wearing sari that she purchased from Gunjan. Is that right? Susan, can you turn yourself on? We want to see. Oh, maybe she stepped away. Oh, that's too bad. Well, Susan, this was your chance. And you know, she hates not having that. Okay, one last question then. We'll see if Susan will come back. And I think I'm curious about this too. Do any governments, any local governments or countries give support to craftspeople, artists that are doing the kind of work that you're promoting here, or are they strictly dependent on commerce?
Well,
Let's see your sari, Susan.
It's so gorgeous. It is just so gorgeous. And
Stand up.
well, I'm not wearing it as a sari. I'm wearing it as a shawl.
All right.
Gunjan knows that I bought one from her in Bhubaneswar, and it got stolen from my backpack in Kathmandu airport. And we assumed that the person who stole it was probably kind of disappointed because it was a sari. So we were back in Delhi, and she kindly got us another one, which is hanging as a window dressing in my dining room in Brooklyn. But this one, I mean, it's just so, they're so exquisite. It's just
Very nice. Thank you.
And I also have been to Assam, by the way. In which we were chased out. We were told we could either leave at 5 a.m. on the highway, or we'd have to wait till 6 p.m.
There was a curfew.
Because of bandas, because of right. So we left at 5 a.m. But we got a tiny bit of that. Yes. Anyway, thank you all so much for this. It's great. It's wonderful.
Well, thank you, Susan, and let's all thank Warp for bringing us together today for this presentation. All right, everyone. So you'll get a follow-up email, and the presentation will be on video. And I'm sure there are more questions, but the panelists, you can just write to them individually and keep the conversation going. So thanks again, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.